Pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to films I should have talked about years ago. So now, for today, let's get around to Candyman, 1992. Of course, I might have to talk about the sequels in a little while in the same way that I've also talked about Ghoulies, and I will talk about those sequels as well. Now it's time to focus on Candyman 1 from 1992. Stars the somewhat legendary actor himself, Tony Todd. So what we got here is a plot that is pretty well played for the early 90s. Enough to compete with the likes of many other slasher films, including Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Child's Play. And Candyman may be lesser known in comparison to those franchises. It sure did do a really good job at what it did. It stars Tony Todd as an artist, Daniel Robitaille, whom in the 19th century ends up getting beaten to death. But not before his arm is sliced off, replaced with a hook, covered with honey, and eventually he hears those famous last words, Candyman. That's basically where the title came from. An African-American individual gets beaten to death, sliced up, and modded, and given a name, an altercation to his own reality. He would basically be laid, cursed, and every time somebody would say his titular name 5 times into a mirror, pretty much rivaling the likes of Bloody Mary. Candyman himself, a ghost, if you will, would appear behind the person who speaks of his name 5 times in a row. But here's the real kicker though. Every time somebody says that, he not only just appears, but he kills the person who says it. With his hook hand, and with a pretty impressive kill count behind him, and with many other things that I could possibly talk about, including the life of another main character within the film, Helen Lyle, who ends up summoning him at some point. She has her own baby, and after some time, Candyman actually steals the baby and tries to convince Lyle to come with him so they could both become violent apparitions that would violently appear behind people's mirrors and kill each and every single one of them that utters out their names. Of course, Lyle refuses. A crumbling building is burned, and the baby does actually survive. Lyle herself does not. Of course, when Candyman himself dies, and of course it's like most slasher films, he always finds a way to come back. At this point in time, nearly 15 years had passed since the first major slasher film had come out, Halloween. So of course, Candyman, utilizing that same old cliche where the main villain always finds a way to come back, is becoming a bit of a repetitive nature. Because they actually managed to make 2 sequels and even a remake in 2020. So, one of these days I'm going to have to get to the other sequels. Same with Ghoulies. Don't worry. I will cover those 3 films any which way that I can. And then of course with Candyman 2 and 3, which would appear throughout the rest of the 1990s, and basically utilizes Tony Todd in every which way possible, just like what you might expect. But here is where this basically launches his career to stardom. And he, by now at this point, is at the level of many other well-known slasher artists and actors. So I'm more than glad I got the chance to watch this finally, just so I'd have the purpose of making some kind of video out of this. And of course, it's pretty short, straightforward, but this review is going to end with an official scoring by myself at an 8.1. So I'd say that's pretty well done for what it is. The art is nicely designed, the filmography is well placed, the casting is pretty selected, and I will say Tony Todd's acting is right on par with the likes of what we've seen from tons of other people. Of course, it's also interesting to note that Tony Todd himself would land future roles, including one that I remember very well, Dreadwing from Transformers Prime, And this was exactly 20 years later after Candyman came out. 20 years later. So, it just proves that even in more recent years, he could still do a great job at acting, even when behind a mic. So, that's just that. Stay tuned though for the sequels when I talk about those too. Maybe the remake after some time, but if you want to see more, go down to my channel. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.